If the world were like a Sleep Number mattress, everything would adapt for your comfort. Because as your life changes and your body changes, Sleep Number mattresses adapt and shift to give you personalized comfort night after night. And now everything's on sale during our Memorial Day event. Save up to $1,200 on mattresses for a limited time. To experience a whole new world of comfort, visit a Sleep Number store or go to sleepnumber.com. Sleep Number, to a good life sleep.
It's time for the Larry H. Miller Utah Summer Games at Southern Utah University in Cedar City. Register today to participate in the 40th anniversary season of a Utah sports tradition at utahsummergames.org. Participate in over 50 sports around the state. Then plan to join the opening ceremonies Friday, June 5th, presented by State Bank of Southern Utah. Register today to participate in the 40th anniversary season of the Larry H. Miller Utah Summer Games.
97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Trevor Sikkema is going to join us coming up here in just a moment. One of our favorites from the NFL Stock Exchange. Get his thoughts on what went down in the NFL draft and get a recap from him. The Fano brothers are settling in nicely in Cleveland. It was kind of fun seeing Spencer stop off that plane, and he was hugging everybody, including the team cameraman. And they're like, "This is a unique." I'm like, "Hey, you know, the Fanos, when you're there, you're family."
Hey, the Fanos are going to hug.
Yeah.
They're going to hug. I'm so happy for them. It's awesome. Really, really neat. Great in-state, some success. He talked about Jack Kelly in the last conversation with Ari, and, Jack Kelly's in a perfect situation in New York. Like, he's going to be he'll be a household name there.
Oh, yeah. I think he's going to that's one guy that I think once he gets into camp, and they're like, oh, we may have gotten a steal here.
Heart translates through skill.
Yeah.
You see it. It's pretty great.
Trevor Sikkema, kind enough to join us. He is the co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange. We've talked to him for a long time, recapping the NFL draft. And first off, let's start with your, everybody likes to talk about this. I know that it's, we got to go 3-4 years before you can really evaluate it. But just after on the rearview mirror, who do you look at as some of the big winners in this year's draft?
Well, I thought the Cleveland Browns draft was excellent. I'm not just saying this because I figured that we'd probably talk about Spencer Fano here on this show, but I think that moving back from 6 to 9, taking the player that you would have taken at 6 anyways, getting some extra draft picks to do it, and then that's the whole reason you were able to go up and get Emmanuel McNeil-Warren at number 58. Then you draft in between those two picks. 2 wide receivers who I think a year or two from now are going to be wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 on this team. You get a bunch of offensive linemen outside of that. You fortify the depth. I feel like this is an excellent job, not just identifying talent, good football players on your team, but also navigating the draft in a way where you were able to maximize when you could pick these players. So that was an A-plus draft for me. I think the Colts, the Buccaneers, the Washington Commanders, the New Orleans Saints, those were all teams that got A's from me as well. I think you really have to be able to make the most of some of those draft classes that don't have a ton of picks or don't have picks in the first round, or take advantage of some guys maybe sliding down the board, really hitting your needs with some premium players. I think that all of those draft hauls were able to do that.
Were you surprised with what the Rams did at 13?
Extremely, yes. And even just beyond number 13 too. Like, I think a lot of people say like, hey, it doesn't matter if Ty Simpson doesn't play this year. They're all good. Max Clare, a player who I like, who they picked in the second round, he's tight end 5 for them this year in a Super Bowl year. The offensive lineman that you drafted in Keegan Trost, the top 100, he's not going to play this year. So it wasn't even just Ty Simpson at 13 overall. You drafted 3 players with your 3 top 100 picks that most likely will not contribute at all whatsoever to a Super Bowl window. And it's hard for me to sit here and criticize 2 of the best doing it in Les Snead and Sean McVay, but I just felt as though the way that they went about this draft took being favorites for a Super Bowl for granted. And I don't like operating that way. And I just think that that's the tough part for me to stomach. I like CJ Daniels, the guy that they got a little bit later on day 3. I actually think he's got a chance to be a contributor for them this upcoming season. But it's hard for me, even beyond the Ty Simpson pick at 13. And, I see people like I saw a quote from somebody. This is from Jeremy Fowler's report, and I love Jeremy. He does a great job covering the NFL. So this is no shade to him at all whatsoever. But he would talk to a source after the fact, and the source said, "Hey, if Ty Simpson doesn't play at all throughout his rookie contract for you, that's a win for the Rams." No, it's not. No, it's not. No, it is not. That is basically that person saying, wow, things were so best case scenario with Matthew Stafford that it all worked out. That's great. But then you drafting Simpson at 13 is a terrible mismanagement of where you thought Matthew Stafford would be in his health and in his NFL career. So there's a world where, of course, this all works out, because I think that Simpson is good enough to win football games in this league. I just think that it's a lot narrower of a path than people are willing to admit, it seems like, that are really trying to support the Simpson at 13 decision.
All right, so I'm asking you to speculate a little bit here, because afterwards he said all the right things and has joked about it. But looking at that body language from Sean McVay, do you think he really signed off on this?
I don't know. I mean, my immediate reaction is that they don't operate independently, right? It's not like Les Snead is making picks and then Sean McVay is making picks. They're too good of an organization, and they've had too much sustained success over the last, I would say, almost 10 years now since he took over that head coaching job, for me to think that they don't operate together. But it was strange, and it was very strange to see that. And afterwards he goes, well, I was tempering my expectation, out of respect and support for Matthew. Okay. So you tempered your expectation the night after the draft, but then the day after you were super happy about it and you didn't mind like showing it then. It's just very strange. I just think that there's not a great way to go about it. I mean, I think that we can maybe call a spade, and that is the fact that Matthew Stafford had his back issues last summer. They didn't even know if he was for sure going to be ready for camp or if he was going to play next year. He does play. He wins MVP. They almost win a Super Bowl for it. But this team probably looks at Stafford and goes, man, you're one tweak of the back away from us being in trouble. And I think that the Rams and Matthews and Sean McVay and Les Snead made this pick knowing that Matthew Stafford was not going to be happy. And this is the same exact thing that happened with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers. It's the same exact thing that happened with Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. You're drafting the heir apparent. The guy who's already there and entrenched in that starting job isn't happy about it. He'd rather have somebody that he could work with to go win a Super Bowl. And to be honest with you, I don't blame him. I'm just very shocked that the Rams looked at their current situation and said, yes, let's draft players completely for the future that are not going to help us win a Super Bowl when we are Super Bowl favorites. I'm very surprised that a team is taking that for granted the way I feel like the Rams did this draft weekend.
Which you mentioned you like Cleveland's draft. Which other teams executed in your mind like the most coherent draft from top to bottom? Kind of had a plan and felt like they really executed it.
Yeah, I think the Buccaneers did a really great job. I'm not just saying that just because I'm from Tampa and I grew up rooting for the Buccaneers. I think that certainly capitalizing on Reuben Bain and drafting him at number 15. I mean, I think the main plan was for them to trade back from 15. But when a player is there you don't expect, they jumped all over it, and I think that they were right to do so. I like the fact that they didn't get over aggressive with linebacker in the second round. They, I think, had opportunities to trade up to go draft Jacob Rodriguez, who I know they really liked, but instead they stick at their spot. They let the draft fall to them. They get a player who I think is a good scheme fit in Josiah Trotter. And then I try to think about this draft class without Ted Hurst in the third round or without Keontae Scott in the fourth round, and I would be less happy. I had Jacob Rodriguez higher on my board than I did Josiah Trotter or even CJ Allen, who I think was in the mix there for them. But if you would tell me, hey, would you rather have a Buccaneers draft class of Reuben Bain Jr., Jacob Rodriguez, Ted Hurst, and then no Keontae Scott, or have it be Reuben Bain, Josiah Trotter, Ted Hurst, and then Keontae Scott, I'd absolutely, without question, no hesitation, pick the latter. So I think that they did a really nice job there. I think the Raiders also had a heck of a draft. I mean, Fernando Mendoza was the obvious at the very top, but to me, Traden Stukes, I think he's going to be a great safety nickel defender for them. I really liked him. Kieran Crawford really helps the edge rush group. I love that they were aggressive to go get Jermon McCoy at the beginning of the 4th round. Mike Washington's a really good number 2 running back behind Ashton Genty, so Genty doesn't have to have 400 touches this upcoming season. And Trey Zune's somebody who I feel like could start for you on the interior and maybe even be a swing guy to play offensive tackle as well. So I thought they did a really great job identifying talent too. And those are a couple of the drafts that I felt like just top to bottom, really good execution of a plan going in.
Spencer Fano, as you mentioned, goes to Cleveland a little bit later on. Caleb Lomu in the 1st round. He ends up going to the Patriots. Give me your evaluation of those 2 players, obviously bookends here at the University of Utah. And do you anticipate seeing both of them maybe starting day one for their respective teams?
I think Fano for sure. He was my top offensive lineman in this draft. I just think he's a special mover. Is he built like, the greatest offensive tackles in the NFL with the length and the size? No, not quite. But I mean, I watched this guy over the last 2 years on his tape, and then I got to see it at the combine. Just the way that he moves is pretty special. What I think is kind of interesting with Cleveland's situation is during free agency, they added a lot of players who are bigger in mass, more power, downhill run game type of offensive lineman. And even though Spencer Fano is great in the run game, he's best when he's out in space. He's best when he's running those mid and outside zone concepts. And it felt like a lot of the guys that they drafted were offensive linemen to run zone blocking schemes. So maybe they just wanted that diversity in there, but I thought it was kind of funny. You got the power guys, you got the zone guys, they all got to mesh together and you got to feel good about it. But I absolutely think that Fano could start for them day one. Lomu's a little bit different. The Patriots have said that they want to continue to give Will Campbell a shot to be their left tackle. And I think that makes sense. And they've got Morgan Moses to play right tackle, at least to start as the veteran there. But Lomu, I think, is in a great spot because as a redshirt sophomore kind of coming out and one of the younger prospects in this class, I think he's got a lot of potential, but he still needs to get a little bit stronger, fill out his frame. And with that, make sure you're getting some good practice reps and good training camp reps, good preseason reps, things like that. I think there's a world where he could start a handful of games and maybe certainly if one of those offensive tackles gets hurt at some point, you feel pretty good about Lomu being able to slide in there. But they'll cross-train him at right tackle and left tackle this season, so he's got the experience and the feel for doing both of those things. But to me, Lomu is more of a 2027 and beyond kind of an offensive tackle pick for the Patriots.
How hard is it for these guys to go from right tackle to left tackle? I know going interior would be much different, but switching side to side on the bookends, how difficult is that to make that adjustment in the NFL?
Well, offensive linemen have told me before, it's like trying to wipe your butt with the opposite hand. You can do it. It's just a little awkward at first, and you got to kind of get used to it. And I always
can get a little messy at times. Yeah.
And
I like the visual.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to timing of everything, timing, muscle memory, because there's so much of, if you've played like left tackle your entire career, whether it was in high school and then you get to college and all that, when you hear that ball is snapped, whether it's a call from the quarterback or a silent count or whatever it is, your muscle memory is boom, like 1 foot really kicking out. And when you're in a situation where you're already in the NFL trying to learn a lot of new things, you might be learning new hand technique. You might be learning, what these defensive ends are going to do with their pass rush moves. That's really the dangerous part of moving from left to right tackle is when your muscle memory kicks in, but then all of a sudden you go, oh shoot, no, I'm not on the left side of the line of scrimmage anymore. And then your feet are kind of getting tangled and then you're a little bit late. So it's just more of that muscle memory thing. And some guys struggle with it more than others, but it always takes time. There's no doubt about it. It's definitely a challenge. I tell people it's not as easy as going into Madden and, switching this guy from left tackle to right tackle. That's not as simple as it is. It takes time. It takes reps. And there's nothing like live reps, too, to make sure that you get that muscle memory right. So it does take a little bit of time, but it is something that is certainly possible.
As one who has broke their right wrist and dislocated or tore my labrum, the left hand, it is not easy.
Okay.
And you do need reps.
Fair enough.
Okay. I want to keep it local here. Talk about Jack Kelly, your observations of him and the fit in New York.
Yeah. So, he's somebody who is like a heart and soul type of a player, right? And, he gets drafted a little bit later. He's going to be a depth player for him. He's going to be a special teams player for them. But, I remember reading this in Dane Brugler's The Beast that he was a BMX champion racer. And I don't know. I just love that. I love when linebackers play extreme sports. I don't know, because I feel like playing linebackers in extreme sport anyway.
Yeah.
So everything that I've sort of read about this guy is that the toughness, the leadership. He's going to be a dirty work type of a player. And when you get drafted the day 3 of the draft, that's what you have to be. It's what you have to be to make the team. It's what you have to be because your first role is probably going to be on special teams. And so the physicality, I think, is what stands out to you when you watch this player play. And, does he have the smoothest movements for coverage? No, that's why I'm not sure that he's ever going to be a long-term starting linebacker in the league, but somebody who could stick around and certainly make a career for himself as a special teams player and a guy that teams just love to have in the locker room and their depth. Everything that I've read about him, he definitely checks those boxes.
When you look at somebody or like a school that's produced a lot of quality tight ends in the league, like the University of Utah has, does sometimes what's gone on before a player can help out their cause, like the Broncos take a flyer on Dallin Bentley in the 7th round? Could that just because, hey, look, they've been coaching these dudes up right. These guys have gone to the next league or gone to the next level and had some success. Let's see what we can do here.
Yeah, I think so. And Denver's a really good spot because they needed new tight ends anyways. I think that the tight end room is going to be a little bit crowded in 2026, but 2027, I think it's going to open up significantly. So they needed a player like that as a depth tight end. And to be honest, I thought Bentley was going to get drafted higher. So to me, it wasn't even just, hey, let's take a flyer on, a school that's really been able to produce NFL tight ends. It was also hey, I think this guy shouldn't be on the board at this point. I think that we're getting a pretty good steal here because, which tight end did they draft a little bit earlier in the draft?
Oh, Jolly.
Yes. So they draft Jolly, who I think is a really good fit for what they want to do, sort of as that slot receiver tight end, that big tight end that can play in space and operate well in space. But I think Bentley's a really good next option there, a depth option who, like I said, it's going to be crowded in 2027. Not sure that Bentley's going to be somebody to get on the field for them this year, but the following year, I think there's a chance that he can make that 53 and contribute to that lineup.
Who do you? What's your take on our guy? I'm a newly minted member of Raider Nation, and really excited about our prospects, and so glad
our prospects.
We had a great draft.
Yeah.
And but Fernando, can this guy, is he made of the right stuff to take on all that is Raiders and all that comes with it, the bad haircut and all? Can he deal with it and take them to can he get them out of the mire?
Yeah, I'm excited about him. I really am. I talked about him pre-draft as, look, you're not just taking this player at number 1 overall because you feel like you have to. I think this is a legitimate quarterback option for them to take. I would have taken Fernando Mendoza over Cam Ward. So I like Cam Ward a decent amount last year, but I like Fernando Mendoza even more. And something that I really liked about Mendoza, this is the way that I kind of start to talk about him, is I didn't like him at all coming into the year. His last year at Cal, he had more turnover-worthy plays than he had big-time throws. Sure, the arm was there. You saw the flashes, but I didn't feel like he was a great decision-maker. I didn't feel like the ball placement was consistently there. He was much more flashes than he was total consistency when he was at Cal. But he gets to Indiana, and he truly ups his game. He truly hones in his game. Much more detailed, much more consistent. And then you also continue to see a little bit of added mobility, adequate arm strength, above average arm strength for the NFL level, great size for the NFL level as well. And then, of course, as the season goes on, Indiana goes undefeated and wins the national championship. He wins the Heisman Trophy. He's got that moment in the national championship where, his team's in a situation where they can really put the game away, and he scrambles from 20 yards out, breaks 2 tackles, and takes a massive shot to the ribs, extending that football out across the goal line. And what I love so much about that clip specifically is go back and watch the broadcast angle of that clip where when he outstretches that ball and gets smacked in the ribs as he is crossing the goal line, there are 4 out of the 5 offensive linemen all put their hands up to signal touchdown. All of those guys are fired up to see their quarterback take a shot like that, put his body on the line, get into the end zone to go win them some hardware and the biggest game of their entire season for a national championship. I think Fernando's made of the right stuff. I love that Tom Brady's going to be in his ear consistently about how to continue to get better every single year. And I think he's in a good spot.
So from your perspective, when you're evaluating guys, what is the impact of NIL meant for your evaluation and the quality of players, since a lot of guys are sticking around because, frankly, they can make more money in college than they can, as a third, fourth, fifth round pick in the NFL. Are you seeing the talent level improve with guys going to the draft because they're sticking around a little longer?
Yeah, I am. And, I think the biggest impact on NIL is with the breakout age or just draft age conversations. And I think it's sort of twofold here. We've got to sort of talk about older prospects a little bit differently. Like before, if you come into the NFL and you were 24, 25 years old, I think a lot of people would be like, I'm not drafting a 24, 25-year-old rookie. Like that guy is going completely undraftable. It didn't matter what position you played. It didn't matter how successful you were when you were in your final year of college football, you weren't getting drafted. But I think that we've got to talk about these things differently because the average age of a draft is going to start to get higher. It's going to get to, 23, 24, sometimes 25 years old. And you've got to be okay with that. You got to recognize, how much you're going to get out of them when it comes to a second contract. But you also, in ways, have to be a little bit more okay with players who are a little bit older, because if not, then you're going to miss contributors on your team. I will say on the other side of the coin, the NFL draft typically rewards guys who have younger breakout ages. Like if you're really good when you're 19 and you're 20 years old and you're coming out of the draft and you're 20 or 21 or something like that, we used to value that high. Now you value it even higher, because if you're in the draft and you're 20 or 21 years old, unless you're just getting really bad advice, that means you're a really good player, because that means that you are turning down millions of dollars to stay in college and still think you're good enough to come out in the draft and be an NFL talent at a younger age. So I think it's more of, that's how I see the differences in those conversations, is you got to be a little bit more lenient with the guys that are a little bit older, because it's just the age that we live in. And then you also, I think you even prioritize the players that are a little bit younger that feel that they're talented enough to come out when they're 20 and 21 years old.
Hey, Diego Pavia didn't get drafted because the guy's a bit of a train wreck. It's because he's 5'9", right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, look, Pavia was never getting drafted. He wasn't. He's like, I've loved watching Diego Pavia over the last 2 years. It's been so much fun. It's been a blast watching Vanderbilt be giant killers with Diego Pavia at quarterback, but he was never going to get drafted. And it's a combination of, yes, he's small. He also doesn't have like an NFL arm. He was in an offense where so much of it was built around play action or option or RPOs. And he operated that very, very well. And anything within 40 yards, he could make you pay. He could deliver a good strike. But you start to ask him to really stretch it deep down the field consistently, and he just doesn't really have that type of an arm strength because he doesn't have that physical profile. So I knew he was never going to get drafted. It's interesting that he decided to sign with the Baltimore Ravens and sort of the quarterback room that they have there. But yeah, it's to me, it's much less a character thing that people might say. And it's just, he's such an outlier when it comes to the size to succeed in the NFL.
Well, hey, we appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out with us, Trevor. Looking forward to catching up with you again. You guys do a great job on NFL Stock Report. I appreciate what you do. Great content. I know you guys are betting on yourselves, and I listen all the time and can't thank you enough for what you do.
I appreciate it, guys. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Trevor Sikkema, NFL Stock Exchange, right here on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.